Everything you fear has one disgusting little trick. Most of the time, it is not here. It is not touching you. It is not standing in front of you. It is not happening right now. And yet it controls your breathing. It controls your decisions. It decides who you text, who you avoid, what you postpone, what you tolerate, what you never dare to say out loud. That is the humiliating power of fear. It can rule your life without even being in the room. You think fear is protecting you, but half the time, fear is just your imagination wearing a police uniform. It takes a possibility and dresses it up as destiny. Maybe they will leave. Maybe you will fail. Maybe you will lose everything. Maybe everyone will finally see that you're not as strong as you pretend. And suddenly, your body reacts as if the disaster has already happened. Your chest tightens. Your stomach drops, but nothing has happened. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Spinoza saw something brutal about fear. Fear is not wisdom. Fear is not prophecy. Fear is not some sacred inner voice telling you the truth. Fear is what happens when the mind does not understand what is controlling it. And when the mind does not understand causes, it invents monsters. That is why fear feels so real, not because it is true, but because your ignorance gives it room to grow teeth. And Spinoza's answer is not motivational bullshit. He does not tell you to be brave. He does not tell you to repeat some little affirmation in the mirror. No, Spinoza gives you something colder, more dangerous, understanding. Because once you understand what produces your fear, fear loses its crown. In this video, we are going to attack fear at its root, not by pretending danger does not exist. Not by becoming some fearless motivational clown, but by seeing the one thought that can strip fear of its authority. And once you see that clearly, the monster starts to look embarrassingly small. Are you ready to rock? Let's rock that wisdom! Here is the first thing we need to get straight. Fear is not the same thing as danger. Danger is simple. A car is coming at you. A fire is spreading. A person is attacking you. Your body reacts, and good. It should. That kind of fear is not the problem. That kind of fear is ancient, useful, biological. It is the alarm system doing its job. But that is not the fear destroying most people. Most people are not being chased by wolves. They are being chased by thoughts, by possibilities, by what ifs, by things that could happen, might happen, probably won't happen, but still somehow manage to ruin the entire day. That is the fear Spinoza helps us understand, not the fear of the thing in front of you, the fear of the thing your imagination keeps projecting in front of you. And that fear is much more humiliating, because you cannot punch it, you cannot run from it, you cannot lock the door and keep it outside, because it is coming from inside the machine. Your own mind becomes the horror factory. It takes a small piece of uncertainty and starts manufacturing torture. Someone does not answer your message. That is all. Just silence. A tiny little gap in reality. But your mind cannot tolerate the gap. So it fills it. Maybe they are angry. Maybe they are bored of you. Maybe they found someone better. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe this is the beginning of the end. And now look at you. Nothing has happened. But your nervous system is already holding a funeral. This is where Spinoza becomes dangerous. Because Spinoza would say,
stop treating that fear like a revelation. It is not revelation.
It is not insight. It is not wisdom. It is an effect. Something caused it. And if something caused it, then it can be understood. That is the first cut. Fear stops being a god the moment you treat it like a mechanism. Because most people worship their fear. They don't call it worship, of course. They call it being realistic, being careful, being intuitive, being prepared, being smart. But half the time, I'm just being realistic means my imagination has produced a nightmare, and I've decided to respect it as intelligence. That is the scam. Fear borrows the language of truth. It says, I'm warning you. It says, I'm protecting you. It says, I see what you don't want to see. And sometimes, yes, fear does point to something real. But often, fear is not showing you reality. It is showing you your relationship with uncertainty. And if your relationship with uncertainty is sick, then every unknown becomes a monster. A delayed answer becomes abandonment. A mistake becomes failure. A strange pain in your body becomes death. A hard conversation becomes humiliation. This is why fear is so exhausting. It does not need facts. It only needs space. That is why the thumbnail says, fear is an illusion. Not because pain is fake, not because danger is fake, not because bad things never happen. They do. Life is perfectly capable of punching you in the teeth without asking permission. But fear's illusion is more subtle than that. Fear makes possibility feel like certainty. That is the trick. It takes "this could happen" and slowly turns it into "this will happen." Then it turns "this will happen" into "this is already happening." And once your body believes that, congratulations, you are no longer living in reality. You are living inside a prediction, a prophecy made by panic. And the worst part is that the body does not care if the prophecy is fake. The body obeys the image. If the image is vivid enough, your body reacts. Not because the disaster is here, but because your imagination has become convincing enough to impersonate reality. This is why intelligent people can be some of the most terrified people alive. Because intelligence gives imagination better tools. A stupid fear is simple. A smart fear builds an entire legal case. It gathers evidence, it creates timelines, it cross-examines your memories. It says, remember when this happened before? It says, look at the pattern. It says, you're not anxious, you're perceptive. And suddenly your fear is not just a feeling, it has a PhD, it has footnotes. It has a whole fucking PowerPoint presentation explaining why your life is definitely about to collapse. But Spinoza would not be impressed. Because for Spinoza, the question is not, how dramatic is the fear? The question is, do you understand its cause? Because if you don't understand the cause, you are not free. You are being moved. You are being pushed around by something inside you that you have mistaken for yourself. That is one of Spinoza's most brutal ideas.
We think we are free because we are conscious of what we want, but we are ignorant of what causes us to want it.
And the same applies to fear. You think, I am afraid because this situation is terrible. But Spinoza asks something colder. Are you sure? Or are you afraid because your mind does not understand what is happening? So it has turned uncertainty into a monster. That is the shift. Fear is not always a signal from reality. Sometimes fear is a confession. It confesses, I do not understand the causes. I do not know what will happen. I cannot control this. So I will imagine the worst and call that preparation. And that is where the prison begins. Because once fear convinces you that imagination is knowledge, it can control anything. It can control your relationships, your work, your creativity, your honesty, your risks, your silence, your entire future. Not with chains, with images, with little mental movies of everything going wrong. That is the machine. And Spinoza's first move is to unplug the projector, to look at fear and say, no, you are not prophecy, you are not truth, you are not my master, you are an effect. And now, I'm going to find your cause. This is where Spinoza stops being comforting. Because he does not look at your fear and say, you poor thing. He does not say, your fear is valid. He does not say, just listen to your feelings. Spinoza does something much colder. He asks, what caused this? That is it. That is the knife. What caused this fear? Not what story are you telling about it? Not how dramatic does it feel? Not how many times have you replayed it in your head until it started looking profound? What caused it? Because for Spinoza, emotions are not random little storms sent by the universe to ruin your afternoon. They are effects. They come from causes. Your fear has a structure. Your anxiety has a structure. Your panic has a structure. Your insecurity has a structure. Even your most chaotic inner collapse is not magic. It is produced, and that should terrify you a little. Because it means your fear is not as mysterious as it wants to appear. It means the monster has machinery inside it. It has gears. It has wires. It has a history. It has causes. And if it has causes, then it can be understood. This is the great humiliation of fear. Fear wants to feel sacred. It wants to feel deep. It wants to feel like some secret wisdom coming from the basement of your soul. But Spinoza drags it under a lamp and says, no, You are an effect. Let's examine you. That is why Spinoza is so dangerous. He does not flatter your suffering. He does not romanticize your anxiety. He does not turn your panic into an identity. He wants to understand it so clearly that it loses its power to hypnotize you. Because the moment you understand a thing as necessary, as caused as part of a chain, it stops looking like a demon. It starts looking like a mechanism. And mechanisms can be studied. Demons demand worship. Mechanisms demand analysis. That is the whole shift. Most people treat fear like a demon. They bow to it. They negotiate with it. They organize their life around it. They say, I can't do that because I'm afraid. I can't say that because I'm afraid. I can't leave because I'm afraid. I can't begin because I'm afraid. I can't be honest because I'm afraid. And the fear sits there like a little king on a rotten throne, deciding the borders of your life. But Spinoza would ask,
why are you letting an effect rule you? Why are you giving authority to something you have not even understood?
That is brutal, because it means your fear is not automatically worthy of obedience. Your fear may be loud, it may be intense, it may be physically convincing, it may make your body shake like reality itself is breaking open. But intensity is not truth. A feeling can be powerful and still be confused. A thought can be vivid and still be wrong. A nightmare can wake you sweating and still be nothing but a nightmare. This is one of the hardest lessons to accept. Your body can react honestly to a lie. That does not make you weak, it makes you human. But if you do not understand it, it also makes you controllable. And Spinoza cared about freedom, but not the cheap kind of freedom people brag about. Not, I do whatever I want. That is not freedom. That is often just slavery with better branding. For Spinoza, you are not free just because you can choose between options. You're free to the degree that you understand what is moving you. That is the part people hate. Because we love to believe we are in charge. We love to believe our choices come from some heroic inner captain steering the ship. But Spinoza says, look closer. You are conscious of your desires. You are conscious of your fear. You are conscious of your decisions. But most of the time, you are ignorant of the causes that produce them. You know that you are afraid. But do you know why? You know that you avoid the conversation. But do you know what image you are obeying? You know that you keep checking the phone. But do you know what imagined disaster is pulling your hand toward it? You know that you procrastinate. But do you know what humiliation you are trying not to meet? You know that you stay silent. But do you know which old fear taught you that silence was safer than truth? That is where Spinoza hits hard. He is not asking whether you feel fear. Of course you do. He is asking whether you understand the chain that produced it. Because until you do, your fear is not just something you feel. It is something that uses you. It thinks through you. It speaks through you. It chooses through you. You say, I decided not to risk it, but maybe fear decided. You say, I just don't feel ready, but maybe fear translated itself into caution. You say, I'm being realistic, but maybe fear dressed itself in a suit and learned adult vocabulary. This is how fear survives in intelligent people. It becomes reasonable. It does not scream. It explains. It gives you arguments. It gives you evidence. It gives you respectable excuses. It says, not now. Wait until you are more prepared. Don't make things awkward. Don't ruin what you have. Don't expose yourself. Don't be stupid. Don't start again. Don't say what you actually think. And because it sounds calm, you obey it. You think you are being mature. But sometimes, thinking it through is just panic pretending to be strategy. Spinoza's method cuts through that. He forces one question back onto the table. What is causing this? Not what is the fear saying? Not how persuasive is the fear? Not how long has the fear been talking? What is causing it? Because fear speaks in conclusions. Understanding looks for causes. Fear says, you will fail. Understanding asks, what evidence do I actually have? Fear says, they will dump you. Understanding asks, what do I know? And what am I inventing? Fear says, you are trapped. Understanding asks, what are the real limits and which ones are imaginary? Fear says, you cannot survive this. Understanding asks, have I confused pain with annihilation? That is the difference between slavery and freedom. The slave obeys the emotional conclusion. The free person investigates the cause. And no, this does not mean you become emotionless. That is another stupid fantasy. Spinoza is not asking you to become a stone. He's not saying, kill your feelings. He is saying something much more powerful. Understand your feelings so deeply that they stop dragging you by the throat. Because an emotion understood is not the same as an emotion worshipped. A fear understood is not the same as a fear obeyed. When you understand what your fear is made of, you create distance. Not denial, distance. You can look at it, you can name it, you can examine it, you can say, there it is. The old abandonment image, the humiliation movie, the fantasy of total failure, the need to control what cannot be controlled, the childish belief that uncertainty means danger. And once you can see it that clearly, something changes. The fear is still there, but now it is exposed, and exposed fear is weaker than hidden fear, because hidden fear feels like reality. Exposed fear looks like a pattern, and patterns can be broken, not by screaming at them, not by positive thinking, not by pretending you are some fearless alpha philosopher walking through life like a statue with sunglasses, but by understanding the exact machine that turns uncertainty into terror. Because fear hates clarity, because fear grows best in fog. It grows in vague possibilities. It grows in half-knowledge. It grows in silence. It grows in the space between what you know and what you imagine. So, the moment you begin asking for causes, fear starts losing oxygen. It cannot just sit there on its throne saying, "Because I said so!" No! Now it has to answer. What exactly are you afraid of? What image are you seeing? What are the facts? What are the assumptions? What is memory? What is projection? What is actual danger? What is theatrical bullshit produced by an overstimulated mind? That is the Spinozan attack. You do not defeat fear by becoming louder than fear. You defeat fear by becoming more precise than fear. Fear hates being forced to define its terms, because the more precise you become, the smaller the monster gets. And this is why the one thought matters. Fear is not reality. Fear is imagination pretending to know the future. But Spinoza would push it even further. Fear is what happens when imagination fills the space where understanding should be. That is the battlefield. Imagination versus understanding. Fog versus cause. Monster versus mechanism. And the question is simple. Are you going to keep obeying the monster? Or are you finally going to open it up and see what it is made of? This is where we get to the one thought. The thought that sounds simple, almost too simple. But if you actually understand it, it starts pulling fear apart from the inside. Here it is. There is no monster behind reality. There are only causes you understand, and causes you don't. That is it. That is the blade. There is no monster behind reality. There are only causes you understand, and causes you don't. Fear hates this thought, because fear needs mystery. Fear needs darkness. Fear needs the unknown to feel supernatural. It needs you to believe that something terrible is hiding behind the curtain. Something waiting, something personal, something aimed at you, something that wants to destroy you. But Spinoza does not see reality that way. For Spinoza, reality is not haunted. Reality is not run by demons. Reality is not a private theatre built to punish your nervous system. Reality is a chain of causes. Everything follows from something. Your thoughts, your body, your desires, your panic, your memories, your reactions, your failures, your imbecile compulsions, your fear. Nothing floats outside the chain. Nothing appears from nowhere. Nothing is magic. And yes, that sounds cold. Good. Fear needs coldness. Fear feeds on dramatic heat. It feeds on the feeling that something huge, dark, and undefined is coming for you. But when you look at it through Spinoza's eyes, you stop asking, what if the monster comes? And you start asking, what causes are actually operating here? That question changes everything, because fear wants the world to look like a horror movie. Spinoza turns it into anatomy. Open the monster. Find the organs. Find the wires. Find the cause. A noise in the dark is terrifying when you do not know what made it. Same noise becomes nothing when you understand the cause. A shadow in the corner can look like a figure watching you. Then you turn on the light, and it is a jacket. The jacket did not become less dangerous. It was never dangerous. Your ignorance gave it teeth. That is fear. Ignorance with teeth. And once you understand that, fear loses something crucial. Its right to be obeyed. Not its intensity. Not immediately. Your body may still shake. Your stomach may still tighten. Your mind may still produce the image. But the image no longer sits on the throne. Because now you know what it is. Not prophecy. Not destiny. Not truth. A confused idea. A partial understanding. A mental image produced by causes you have not yet examined. That is why fear feels so powerful before understanding arrives. Because when you do not understand the cause, the imagination fills the gap. And the imagination is not humble. It does not say, I do not know. It says, let me invent hell. That is the whole problem. The mind hates an empty space. It hates not knowing. It would rather imagine catastrophe than sit quietly with uncertainty. So it creates an answer. A dark answer. A vivid answer. A disgusting little answer that makes your body react. They didn't answer because they hate you. You made one mistake because you were a failure. You feel pain because something is seriously wrong. You feel anxiety because your life is collapsing. You were rejected because you are unlovable. You are alone because you will always be alone. Look how fast it happens. From fact to interpretation, to identity, to prison. That is fear's favourite staircase, and Spinoza breaks it by forcing you back down. Not with positive thinking, with cause. What is the fact? What is the cause? What do I understand? What am I inventing? What is necessary here? What is imaginary? That is the one thought in action. There is no monster behind reality. There are only causes I understand, and causes I don't. This does not mean everything is safe. That would be idiotic. Sometimes there is real danger. Sometimes the diagnosis is bad. Sometimes they do leave. Sometimes you do fail. Sometimes the money does run out. Sometimes life does not gently teach you a lesson. Sometimes it smashes your face into the pavement and leaves you there to explain philosophy to your own bleeding mouth. Spinoza is not denying reality. He is not selling you a toy universe where nothing hurts. He is saying something much harder. Even pain has causes. Even loss has causes. Even disaster has causes. And the more clearly you understand the causes, the less you are ruled by fantasy. You may still suffer, but you suffer in contact with reality, not inside a hallucination. That matters, because there are two kinds of suffering. There is the suffering reality gives you, and then there is the suffering your imagination adds, because apparently reality was not already generous enough. Reality gives you one problem. Fear gives you 27 sequels. Reality gives you silence. Fear gives you abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, loneliness, and a full documentary about why nobody could ever love you. Reality gives you a mistake. Fear gives you a trial, a sentence, and a lifetime identity as a failure. Reality gives you uncertainty. Fear gives you apocalypse. Spinoza's thought cuts off the extra suffering. It says, stop, return to causes. Do not add monsters. Do not add fate. Do not add prophecy. Do not add your whole wounded mythology to one fact. Understand the thing as clearly as you can, and then act from that understanding. This is why fear starts to shrink when you get precise. Because vague fear is infinite. Specific fear is limited. I am scared can mean anything. I am imagining that if I say what I think, they will reject me, and I will feel like the abandoned child I once was. That is different. Now the monster has a name. Now it has a shape. Now it has a history. Now it has causes. And the moment a fear has causes, it stops being a god. It becomes a problem. Maybe still painful. Maybe still serious. But not divine. Not absolute. Not untouchable. That is the humiliation of the monster. It wanted to be fate. It was a mechanism. It wanted to be truth. It was an image. It wanted to be your master. It was confusion with a loud voice. This is why Spinoza's thought is so powerful. It does not ask you to win a wrestling match with fear. It asks you to change the category. Fear says, I am reality. You say, no, you are an effect. Fear says, I am the future. You say, no, you are imagination. Fear says, I am protecting you. You say, maybe. Or maybe you are repeating an old pattern and calling it safety. Fear says, you must obey me. You say, fuck no, I must understand you. That is the revolution, not emotional comfort. Intellectual refusal, the refusal to let fear define what is real. Because most people never do this. They feel fear and immediately reality changes. The room changes, the future changes, the other person changes, their own identity changes. Everything gets filtered through the fear. Suddenly, the world is darker. People are threats. Silence is evidence. Uncertainty is doom. Memory becomes a prosecutor. The future becomes a punishment. And they do not say, I am experiencing fear. They say, this is how things are. That is the fatal mistake. They confuse the lens with the world. Spinoza's one thought breaks the lens. There is no monster behind reality. There are only causes you understand and causes you don't. Fear is not random. Fear points, badly, confusedly, dramatically, but it points. It points to what you depend on. It points to what you think you cannot lose. It points to what you believe would destroy you. It points to the places where you have handed your freedom to something outside you. Fear of rejection points to your hunger for approval. Fear of failure points to your dependence on success for identity. Fear of abandonment points to the part of you that thinks being alone means being annihilated. Fear of humiliation points to the ego that still believes image is survival. Fear of death points to the body's deepest fact. You are not in control here. And that is why fear can become useful. Not because it is wise, but because it exposes your chains. Fear shows you where you are not free. It shows you what owns you. And once you see what owns you, you have a chance to understand it. That is how fear begins to lose authority. Not by being denied, by being decoded. You stop saying, I'm afraid, therefore I must stop. And you start saying, I'm afraid, therefore something in me needs to be understood. That is a completely different life. A person who obeys fear becomes smaller every year. A person who understands fear becomes harder to manipulate, harder to control, harder to scare into obedience, because they no longer bow automatically before the dark image. They investigate. They ask for causes. They separate what is real from what is imagined. They stop giving the future a microphone every time their nervous system gets bored. This is what Spinoza gives you. Not a hug, not a slogan, not fake courage. A ruthless little thought that can stand in front of fear and say, show me your causes. Show me what you are made of. Show me the facts. Show me the fantasy. Show me the wound. Show me the desire. Show me the ignorance. And if fear cannot answer, it loses authority. If fear can answer, then you have something real to work with. Either way, you win. Because now you are no longer kneeling. You are understanding. And understanding is the beginning of freedom.